Good morning or good afternoon, depending where you are today. Welcome to our webinar series, The Future of AI-Driven Cybersecurity. Today is Thursday, September 12th, 2024. My name's Jeff Lizerbraum. I'm a pre-sales solutions architect here with Managed Solution. And today I'm going to be joined here with William Ford, one of our network and systems engineers, who is phenomenal. You're really going to enjoy this one. He's an expert not only in the Microsoft security world, but also in networking, things like Fortinet, Port Knox. So there's going to be a lot of information shared during this session. Now, we had a session of our first webinar on Thursday, August 22nd, where Lloyd Bowen, our virtual CIO, joined us to talk about compliance and how AI also plays into the world of compliance. It was a really good one. I'll provide the link in the webinar a little bit later on so you can check it out and get caught up. We're also having a webinar coming up on Wednesday, October 2nd, 2024, and it's going to be at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern, same time, same bat channel, and there's going to be a ton of information shared there as well. And this is all leading up into Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Now, for today's session, what we're going to be talking about are zero trust principles. What are they? How does AI apply to them? William and I are going to cover a lot of those aspects. So for today's agenda, first off, I want to give you a little recap, catch you up to speed on where we came from our last webinar, and to show you where we're at today. And that means getting aligned with zero trust principles, showing you steps to implement zero trust in your organization, and really, how does AI play a role in all of this? So I'm going to be showing you some demos and dashboards. Same with William, he's going to be showing you that as well. Now, because we're on Zoom, you can go ahead and hit that Q&A button in case you have that burning question you want to ask. So look for the button in Zoom, and we're going to go ahead and answer that question actually during the session, okay? Now, after the session or after the presentation is over, we're going to have some time for you to raise your hand. So go ahead and you can hit that raise hand button. We'll bring you off of mute and you can go ahead and ask your question live. Now, from our last webinar, we were joined by Lloyd Bowen, who talked about compliance and having a good compliance practice can help pave the way to help prepare for these common cybersecurity risks that are out there, everything from smishing and phishing all the way to IoT exposure. Sean Farrell was also here talking about how Managed Solution can really kind of help our customers understand a good compliance practice and really where it all begins from there. So in case you missed it again, we're going to provide a link to that YouTube video so you can get up to speed. We also talked about some of those common vectors where we see cybersecurity come in most often. That includes email, of course, identities, hybrid environments where you're part of a cloud and you also have on-prem solutions, IoT, SQL injections, and Wi-Fi networks. And to go a little bit deeper into the compliance area, Lloyd shared with us the CIA triad. This is where confidentiality, integrity, and availability all meet together to really give you the most comprehensive compliance standard possible. Now, we also talked about in the last webinar the cost of keeping up with the latest cybersecurity attacks that are out there. Attackers are getting smarter, and technology sometimes struggles to keep up, and actually sometimes there's some really big breakthroughs in it, especially AI breakthroughs. Now, sometimes there has to be some budget to be set aside so that you're protecting your organization from those threats and also to prevent any kind of cybersecurity insurance premiums that might go up in case there was some type of attack in your environment. So we don't want to have companies spend more money, but sometimes it's just that reality that we're seeing. I also covered Copilot for Security. Now, this is a tool that Microsoft came out with recently. And how it works is a human, like ourselves, of course, submits that prompt, and that prompt is going to generate some areas within Copilot for Security to orchestrate, to build the context, to provide plugins to get additional data as needed, and then finally to provide that response in natural language. And I also went in and kind of showed you that example of using Copilot for Security, where as you can see, it's a pretty prompt-oriented tool, but it ties in with all of the other tools such as Microsoft Defender or Microsoft Sentinel, things like that that you might have in your organization where you can apply natural language and get some really good reporting out of it. Finally, we talked about how Copilot and AI tools in general, it just makes your job a little bit faster, doesn't it? What they found earlier this year, Microsoft performed a study where it showed that as cybersecurity analysts were performing subject searches, incident responses, things like that, it was 25% faster by using Copilot. Now, analysts were also a little bit more accurate across all tasks. Now, 7% isn't a huge amount, but you know what? I'll take any accuracy improvement that comes our way. And you can see there, 97%, the majority of individuals thought, you know what? This is kind of cool. It was actually kind of fun. They actually wanted to use Copilot to accomplish tasks that were similar in nature the next time they had to do it. So pretty interesting stuff there. And with that said, I'm going to go ahead and give you a little demonstration of where Copilot also shows itself in some of our dashboards, especially in the Microsoft world. So let's shift our focus over to the Microsoft Defender portal. If you are a Microsoft 365 subscriber of services, especially in the Defender family, a lot of your products and services are going to be showing up at security.microsoft.com. Now, at the home page, I can see that there is a lot of activity. What's nice about this is that Microsoft has reinvented the Microsoft Defender portal to be really a unified security and operations center all in one. On the left side here, I have exposure management, I have investigation and response, threat intelligence, my assets are listed here. If I'm a Microsoft Sentinel subscriber, I have all of the functionality of Microsoft Sentinel also all unified in this interface here. What's nice about this feature also is that if I go into my incidents and alerts, and let's say I want to look at an incident that came up here, I can actually see that I have a capability on the right side known as Copilot. And Copilot for Security is right here at our fingertips to give us a lot more information. In this example, I have an SAP financial process manipulation, and I can tell that there was an attack disruption. That's actually a good thing. I can see that it was labeled with credential phishing, and there was an attack disruption here by Microsoft Defender XDR, and it was also tagged as a credential phishing tag. Now, I can look at some of the usual things that we undergo as far as the assets and investigations and things like that. But what's nice about Copilot is that it pulls up the incident summary all in one page here, where I can look at the initial access, the defense evasion. I mean, it's right here in natural language for me to be able to process it. Also, it gives me a lot of investigation information areas that I can report to any kind of incident compliance manager in my organization. We can see the users that were impacted. We can send out communications to the users to mitigate anything and to give them a little bit of alerting and maybe some education along the way. So a lot of information here can be gleaned from Copilot just on the right side of the screen here. And heck, if you want to do any more prompting, you can certainly do that by generating any new prompts, creating a new incident report on any of these attacks. So Just in a quick nutshell, that is one of the key features of how AI is being integrated into today's Defender portal. Another thing I wanted to point out also was that, especially if you are subscribed to Microsoft Sentinel, and we're going to be covering this quite a bit today, especially with Will, is that there is a whole attack chain disruption that happens with any kind of attack, and it starts with an attacker going in and trying to do a little reconnaissance. What can they poke? What are the soft items of your network that they might be able to get through? It then goes into resource development, initial access, execution, and all of these features all together here. And the nice thing is that it's following an industry standard MITRE ATT&CK framework, which covers all of these various aspects of the attack chain. Another key feature is that I can tell how many of my devices or accounts or things like that that were manipulated by clicking on any of these blocks here to give a lot more insight into what was going on within this particular area of the attacks. So very useful information, a lot of integration with Copilot, MITRE ATT&CK. So you're going to see a really overall unified security operations center in one interface here. So hopefully this shows you how Microsoft has their unified security and operations centers all here at your fingertips. Well, with that said, what I'd like to do is introduce you to a special guest of this webinar. Today we have Will Ford, our network and systems engineer who, gosh, I could tell you he's probably gotten many of us and our clients out of a lot of trouble. And so here today, Will, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. I'm William Ford. I'm a network systems engineer here at Managed Solution, working on our project services team. I've been with the company a little bit over 4 years now, and looking forward to completing my 5th year here. I have been in IT for about 12 years now, starting out in networking and then moving into systems engineering. I have worked in the past as an IT manager and IT director.
So what would you say the top favorite things you like about working in network and security roles?
That there's never a dull moment. There's always something going on and someone always needs help with something. It's a great opportunity to get your hands on with a lot of new technologies and just be there on the forefront of security.
Awesome. All right. So from our last webinar, we talked about a lot of the most common cybersecurity risks that are out there today. I can tell you in my years of being in IT, a lot of these things are still very, very much the same. I mean, maybe we didn't have as much smishing back then, but we certainly have a lot of it today. But as far as the, man-in-the-middle attacks, especially DDoS attacks, those are very common. Will, can you tell me a little bit about like what your insights are in terms of the common cybersecurity risks here? And also, are there any other new ones that might not be called out here?
Yeah, I can definitely go into a few of these. Definitely for man-in-the-middle attacks, these are pretty easy to accomplish with just over-the-counter hardware, something that you can buy for $120. You can start attacking wireless networks and putting an access point in the middle between your wireless network and a client that's connecting to it. From there, they're able to decrypt any traffic that goes across it, capture any passwords for any applications, Facebook, Outlook, Office 365, anything that's coming across there, they will be able to decrypt, pull that information out, and be able to utilize against you. With smishing and phishing attacks, these have characteristically been just the primary entryways for a lot of our attackers to gain access to passwords, credentials, accounts that they shouldn't either have access to, or to try to trick someone into thinking they are someone that they're not, to gain some sort of financial reward for. So being able to identify those with tools and applications that are set in
Yeah.
front of you, either your network or being able to configure your networks in specific ways that eliminate these risks for you.
How much of the responsibility, because there are some really slick tools out there that really help to keep up with all the, latest changes and all the nuances with these attacks. But how much of that responsibility falls on, say, like the IT staff that's responsible for their assets versus the actual like software or tool or appliance or the vendor that's, helping develop the code to help keep that up to date. Is there like a balance that you see more on, the customer side owning the data or the vendor sides?
I think there's a shared responsibility in both. I think you bring this question up with the CrowdStrike incident that happened, where a simple change in the application, dividing something by 0, caused multiple systems to blue screen and caused quite the disruption within the cybersecurity space. I think cybersecurity companies have a responsibility to be able to provide code that isn't going to break systems and have a CI/CD pipeline that's doing testing at appropriate levels to make sure that things aren't going to come across and completely ruin people's weekends. In that matter, it also comes up to the IT staff being able to source products that communicate with each other. If you have, 7 different systems, but they're all talking to each themselves and not to each other, then that's not really going to do you much good. You're not able to aggregate that data and be able to see a holistic picture of where your threats and risks may lie.
Gotcha. Yeah, awesome. On the question of denial of service attacks, that has been that's been a word that or a phrase that's been around for ever since I can remember. Has there been any improvements? Because I mean, you can see from the metrics here is that the average attack size increased this year by 233%. But are there any things that are being developed to help just prevent these, or and especially not because this webinar is focused on some AI centric areas? Anything in the terms of like AI or machine learning that that you see in the horizon?
Definitely for DOS and DDoS attacks, there's going to be some sort of AI integration, or there's going to have to be with the amount of data that is coming through just the core network of the United States is insurmountable for just a single human to go ahead and aggregate and say, okay, this is an attack, this is actual legitimate traffic. These attacks are growing because there's IoT devices and unsecure network connected items that can go ahead and generate this traffic, generate these DNS calls to go ahead and either crash services or overload web browsers. You see a lot of this put into place now when you're going onto a website. You'll get a Cloudflare, checking this to make sure you're not a DDoS or a botnet, and then it allows you into the website. So you are seeing an impact to end users' abilities to be able to access these resources by putting up stopgaps for being able to access a web application or having your firewall drop specific traffic for anything that's open for ports specific to the, say, VPN, remote access, things of that nature.
Yeah, and then IoT, last webinar we were talking about, that there are, 127 new IoT machines that go online every second. Doesn't seem I mean, I think it's probably more than that because I just installed a, thermostat that's IoT and like sprinkler systems and now fridges and everything is just, I guess that, as you mentioned, that growth is really contributing to much more DOS and DDoS activity, it sounds like.
Yeah, and a lot of that has to go with application control and security built into the actual devices themselves. There was a report from a security company that installed like actual security system devices, smart control devices, and they were using a some sort of like a SHA-1 key to encrypt their whole entire command and control servers. So someone was able to reverse engineer the key on about $150 worth of cloud computing in about 4 hours, and was able to control every device that was able to connect into that. So being able to have proper encryption, proper protocols built in within your applications, and the application's command and control servers is tantamount to being able to fixing the IoT issue that's kind of coming to the landscape now.
Well, I'm going to shift a little bit over to the basis of like zero trust. Zero trust is the same, it's synonymous with saying assume breach, assume compromise. Don't assume that you're already protected, right? You could have like the best of breed firewalls, devices, appliances out there, but as you mentioned, it's defense in depth, right? Or defense in layers. And I wanted to maybe take this opportunity to talk to you about, some of your take on some of these scenarios here where, so we have an attacker that, they usually like to poke around, right? They want to know, okay, what's enabled? How hard is it going to be? Is it going to be just too almost impossible, or is it maybe not impossible, but is it going to take too much energy in order to break through, the first area where they might kind of check to see if there's any soft areas there, right? So usually, the firewalls that you work with, can you describe like the current capabilities with firewall protections?
So most of the masking applications that are on firewalls can still mask what type of firewall it is, what type of system it is, to obfuscate, say, okay, this is a sonic wall, this is a FortiGate. Others are able to identify traffic from specific botnets depending on access rules and lists, and drop traffic instead of denying it. The difference between a drop packet is the packet is completely dropped. There's no reply that's sent out to the or the person that initiated the communication. With a deny, a packet is sent back to that responder saying, okay, this is a live instance, but we're rejecting your access to this system. So having your external access to drop all packets and not deny them, to make it look like it's a dead host, helps alleviate those. The IDS IPS is only as good as traffic getting in through the front door, and then that's hitting the firewall or wherever your IDS IPS network traffic is scanning for. Anything that happens outside of that, anything can move laterally from that point on.
Got it.
And then with DLP, DLP is great for any cloud instances being able to exfiltrate, but what if a user has an account within the system and is able to download that information to an external computer, or is able to get onto internal file servers that may not be connected with a DLP provider, or don't have any sort of information protection going on them currently.
I mean, how much information can they get from just poking around from the outside?
They can get any open ports that are happening on the firewall itself. Depending on the firewall, they can get the version information from it specifically. And with that information, they can review any critical vulnerabilities that are currently against your system. There are operating systems that are just built to hack firewalls. And it's a pre-built scripts within them that you just enter in an IP address, and it will attack the device itself, going through a predefined list of exploits that it can run against it. Once they have either compromised the firewall by either getting root access or being able to upload some sort of certificate that allows them to gain access, or if they have a remote command execution that they're able to execute from that firewall, they can execute something internally into the system, say specifically with the Palo Alto critical vulnerability that just came through about a month and a half ago. The vulnerability allowed them to send non-formed packets to the firewall that allowed them to gain root access and create files and scripts within the root file system, not just the applications file system, the underlying Linux system that's running the Palo Alto firewall. So there's a lot of things that they can do and gain access to. And once they have access to that, they're able to rat into your network because your firewall usually has access to most of your internal resources from that point on.
Got it. Wow, that's building some tension right there. Well, let's take this for example. So zero trust is the idea where everyone is probably aware that their systems are going to be looked at by either some type of malicious bot, some type of malicious hacker at any given time, just knowing, the landscape right now. But there's other ways, right, that there's entrances into the organization as tight as it could be, right? There's other ways such as social engineering. And with social engineering, it could be, this is probably one of the most simplest examples out there, but just sending a phishing email. It doesn't even have to be to an admin, but because I would say that, if there aren't good practices involved with saying like, implementing, or preventing, admin level access to workstations or things like that, there's going to be definitely some weaknesses on the inside. And that can definitely result if someone responds, it looks attractive. Hey, there's a link for a higher paying job out there. Let's go. I'm all for that. This is where that access starts, but this is just the beginning, right? I mean, because this kicks off a whole chain of events that a hacker can actually start leveraging in order to not only just gain that initial access and, have visibility, but also to execute something like you mentioned, having something be persistent in the environment so that, hey, if they close out their session, the next time they come in, they can come back and continue what they or where they left off. But this is a whole chain of events that could happen. So I guess the question is like, how do we go about step by step and really thinking about to protect ourselves from these situations? And so from that standpoint, I wanted to just call out, some of the areas where we should start. That line right there kind of represents the inside, and it's going to kind of move on to the outside where that castle is as we go in. But starting with the idea of making sure the data that you're trying to protect, the sensitivity of that, we want to make sure that that data is protected first and foremost. So from what Lloyd was mentioning, there has to be a really good security and compliance practice overall. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Keeping that data as secure as possible, having the strong compliance and not just within a compliance team, but a compliance as a organization as a whole. You want to be mindful of that.
The next thing as we kind of move on out a little bit more is, protecting accounts, identities. Can you give me any takes on how maybe in your experience how identity protection applies here?
Password policies. There's a lot of back and forth on this, but setting a defined password policy of requiring one uppercase, one lowercase, a numeral, and a special character. That should probably just go away. You should probably just have a complex password that's over 12 characters long and not set a requirement of what it needs to be or however long it needs to be.
What is your take on password managers?
I think they're good when you have proper security and controls within it, making sure that there's two-factor authentication, making sure that the passwords are consistently checked to make sure that they're not in any exposed data breaches, but also making sure that there's other controls in place on that application. If it's something that's hosted in the web, maybe you have something that is a cloud access firewall. Maybe you're doing some sort of CASB to protect that information, so you're not just letting anyone in the whole wide world to be able to access it. Or even if it's on-prem, maybe you don't want to be able to have everyone connect to an SSL VPN just to get into this. Maybe you can create ZTNA access portals to be able to proxy that information to end users that have multi-factor authenticated into your network using a VPN client or whatever ZTNA client that you're using.
Gotcha. Moving on out. So this applies a lot with endpoint management, endpoint protection. We are in this world very much of a Windows world. We have other operating systems too. Mac OS is very popular, but I would say, patching it definitely stemmed from the Windows world. Patch Tuesdays was always an important thing. Maybe if you could tell me some of the tools that are seen commonly in today's environment to help with endpoint protections and making sure that they're, preventing any kind of malicious content from entering.
Yeah, so we'll just start off with the big one, Intune update rings, being able to control updates and security patching through Intune and Microsoft Defender. Being able to set specific computers that are going to be your test subjects and then be able to roll out specific updates or either feature upgrades to more rings and bigger groups of end users. There's other products, RMM tools, like our in-house Connect, or not in-house, but we use ConnectWise Control. With this, you can use that to do patch management, and these are controlled patches that have gone through ConnectWise's CI/CD platform. So they've tested these on their Windows machines, and they're saying that they're valid. They don't cause any major issues. Where we know that Windows updates have been known in the past to break a lot of things. So wanting to test updates on a small amount of computers that aren't business critical, and then updates to a broader ring, which may be just end users. And then at that point, you want to update your critical servers infrastructure. That way, you know that there aren't any big issues that are going to come up, and you're not going to take down, your Exchange server or a web server that you need for a customer-facing application.
So this is very similar to the password issues, but protecting privileged accounts. Moving on to really kind of encompassing the inside and the outside of the network, this is where we're maximizing security operations. So you've already touched base on endpoints. Now there's other things that go beyond endpoints. There's extended detection and response capabilities, and also making sure that the admin team, the talent, is aware on how to use these properly. And Will, you're going to actually show us some examples of some of the tool sets that you work with regularly to see how it plays in, how these tie together and provide all of these protections in terms of zero trust. And then finally, I just wanted to mention that regular education of end users by doing things like simulations and making sure they have a quiz after if they have maybe clicked on that link they shouldn't have. That definitely goes a long way. But before you move on to showing us, there's any last comments on this?
Just to say that you do, when you have an EDR in place, you do want to make sure you're still leveraging an antivirus. EDR is for anything that's happened after an attack has taken place. It's going to monitor and then remediate. Antivirus is going to be that first line of defense to block anything malicious from actually executing on.
Thank you for clarifying that. That's actually a really good point. So why don't we shift gears? I'll let you share your screen from here and kind of give us an overview of kind of the day in the life of,
yeah, definitely. So I'll go ahead and share my screen here, and I'm going to be in my home lab. So today I'm just going to go over FortiGates and their ZTNA platform. The ZTNA platform is put together by the FortiClient EMS Server. They have options to have this hosted in the cloud or self-hosted option. Today I'm just using a trial version of this software just to give you a demo of this. FortiGates are really nice. There's a lot of SAML IDP login integrations within the within them and built in. So you can create enterprise applications within Azure Active Directory. I'm sorry, not Azure Active Directory. Entra ID, now that it's called, and be able
gotta have those current marketing terms there, right?
Yeah, if they didn't change it up every year. So this allows single sign-on and allows your network folks to be able to focus on just being able to log into network devices and not have to think of a general admin. This also helps with authorization and accounting for these devices, because this will then take a change log of any changes that have been made on the device and say, okay, user X made the change. And we can tie that into login history within Active Directory to see when, sorry, not Active Directory, Entra ID, to see when and where these users signed in from based off the enterprise application that we have created. So for this, it's just a simple login for FortiGate in the Fabric connection. But going into the sign-in logs, we can get a full audit of when someone has connected into the FortiGate and where they connected from. All right, so with the security built in with FortiGate, they have something called Fabric connectors or Security Fabric. What this allows you to do is have either a root FortiGate or a FortiGate manager, which is a cloud application or hosted application you use to manage FortiGate provisioning, to be able to say, okay, I want all of my security and analytics connectors to be synchronized. So say I have a FortiGate that I'm adding and bringing onto the network. This is an Azure FortiGate that I spun up. I want to go ahead and join it into the fabric of my system to be able to get single sign-on for it. So what I can go into it, go into Fabric connectors, go into Edit, and then I'm going to join an existing fabric, and this is going to be FortiGate.net. And then from here, we'll bring in single sign-on, leave it normal, manual, admin profile to super admin. It's going to say that we're joining an upstream FortiGate. And then if I go back to my FortiGate over here, to system, fabric management, the new FortiGate should show up here once it has checked in and registered with the device. I can go ahead and automatically provision it to allow it to go through just by taking its serial number and then adding it into the management and security fabric connectors area.
So what is the benefit of doing this? Is this mainly to either have like a centralized administration point, or is this or is it causing like some different areas of protection?
So it's both. So it's giving a administration and security settings are being passed from the root FortiGate. So if you have any ZTNA tagging, if you have a log analytics connected to it, it's automatically going to configure these settings and pass it over to any other FortiGate that connects in to the security fabric. It's just going to cut down on your administration, put your security policies that you have in place on your root and pass that over to the other ones, as well as adding the single sign-on features for the device, either through FortiGate's IDP or through your own IDP provisioning. Once that provisions, we'll let that go through here for a second, because that's just part of the showcase here. I want to go over the actual EMS server and what it does and what we can do with it. So if I pull up my EMS server here. So with this, this can be your command and control center for a few different applications and services that you're running with FortiGate. FortiClient is not just a SSL VPN service, it's also a security protection, web filter, video filter, vulnerability scanning option on computers. So with this, when you have an endpoint loaded into the devices, everything will show up for this. So on this side, I have my Mac. It is connected into the FortiClient EMS. And I have some zero trust tags here that you'll notice. What these tags will do is they will be dependent on different states of the device, characteristics, software versions, things like that. And we'll go into a little detail of how to configure those and what they do. But what these will do is they'll pass it over into the actual FortiGate, so that if we go into our policy and firewall policy, if I'm creating a new policy in here, we'll just say test policy, test certificate works too. We'll say it's something from my LAN to go my WAN link here, going from a source of all. I can then go into my IP access-based control. So right here, we'll see all the tags that I've created within the FortiGate EMS server. These have now been passed over here. So what this does is this will make sure that the device that's connecting and trying to utilize this policy has this tag associated with it in order for it to reach whatever destination that you have associated to that. So in this case, I do have some policies that are in place with that. And you can always see if you have any tags on your policies. It's usually hidden from the default, so you have to add it into the visibility, drag it over here. So I have one rule right here, which is a LAN to host. This is where my virtual hosts sit, Proxmox. So if I try to get to that actual host itself, I'm not able to access it because I don't have the ZTNA tags in order to access that specific route. But if I go ahead and remove these two, give it some time to refresh, I'm able to access the network host.
Interesting. I see. Okay.
So with that, you can do this for control on internal network access as well as external network access. So if you have an SSL VPN or a ZTNA network connection, you can confirm that the user has, say it's a BYOD device, the user has an antivirus installed, they have their disk encrypted, the computer doesn't show any vulnerabilities on it. Okay, that's a secure device, it can access our internal servers. Oh, maybe we have another device say, oh, it comes through, it doesn't have, has some vulnerabilities that need to be taken care of. We can then either route that to a different VLAN or take that traffic to a specific VLAN and say, okay, you need to remediate these issues before you can access our corporate network, either through a VPN or even on-premise itself.
So this, in a nutshell, is really like the Fortinet's answer to conditional-based access, or is there anything different?
So it is based, it is this like conditional based access, but we can get into a lot more fine detail than what old traditional conditional based policy security group access is. So we'll go into just some of the zero trust tags and what we can actually create and the rules that we can build off of these. So within these rules, it's just a basic naming structure. You can create your own individual tags or tag it to a specific tag that has already been created. But this is where it kind of gets into the fun part and the logic of how these rules are applied. So within the breakout, we have all the major operating systems: Windows, Mac, Linux, iOS, and Android. But from here, we can go through the old classic, what AD group are you in, what IP you're coming from, things like that. But we can also go into say, hey, do you have antivirus? Do you have a specific certificate that's associated with your device? Have you been logged into the domain? Are you currently on Fabric or off Fabric? On Fabric being you're behind, say, a FortiGate firewall or some sort of FortiGate security device, whereas off Fabric, you're at your home, you're at a coffee shop. We can go even into OS versions and registry keys for Windows, so we can check to make sure that there's a specific registry key enabled in order for them to gain access to, say, a secure access location within your network, or even just VPN access. A lot of times, if you're just using username and password, you have a public IP address and a port number. If you look at your access logs and your firewall, you're going to see a whole bunch of failed connections of people just trying to brute force. And that's going to happen because you have ports open on the internet. People are going to try to access them. That's just the way things go. So being able to have security layers in place that say, okay, this device needs to be registered in our EMS server for it to be first to be able to even log into the SSL VPN. Then it needs to be able to make sure that it's a secure access to be able to access our servers. And then we can even define things by a role. So you need to have a secure computer and be a part of the accounting team to be able to access our ERP accounting software, or part of the development team to be able to access a GitHub repository internally, or a test and dev network that you need access to.
Tons of use cases there. So I have to ask, because, this topic is about AI partially. Does Fortinet itself, are they starting to dive into the AI aspect of it, or have they had it all along, or is machine learning already has that already been embedded with it for some time, or any kind of areas you could discuss in terms of, because everyone wants to hear about AI and what can it do for security?
I know in the FortiGuard labs they've been playing with that. What FortiGuard labs is there is a research department. I don't know too many products off the top of my head that have implemented any AI technology within Fortinet, but I can speak to another application, PortKnox. They are a network access and control radius as a service. What they're doing is they're using machine learning and automation within their accounting and authorization. So when they have devices, specifically, we'll say MAC address-based devices, when you have printers, phones, anything like that that's connecting into your network that normally wouldn't be able to use, say, a password, username and password, or certificate-based authentication. You're usually doing MAC-based authentication, saying, okay, these users with X MAC address are good to go. They can come through. With PortKnox, I think the biggest issue with, actually not with PortKnox, but with the biggest issue with MAC address filtering is MAC address spoofing. Someone can just change their MAC address at will on any computer and say, okay, I have the same MAC address as the HP printer down the hall, and I can go ahead and connect into that port and then be able to access whatever the printer network's able to access on your corporate network. With what PortKnox is doing is they're also scanning other identifiable information that is coming from that network connection. So they'll see a change within that saying, oh, hey, what used to be a Brother PC is now showing up as coming from an Intel NIC when it had a Broadcom NIC before. We're going to go ahead and block that. And it's using artificial intelligence to be able to process that data, because at any given moment, you're having hundreds, thousands of log information coming through, checking and accounting to say, okay, is this person really who they are? Yes, this person really is who they are.
Mm-hmm. Is this, I have a question, is this something that Managed Solution offers? Is that, I know that we work in Fortinet, FortiGate products. Is this something also that has been offered to our customers?
Yeah. So this is something that we do offer to our customers. We are a partner of PortKnox to be able to resell and deploy. We have done it in the past for a fintech customer. I would say it was probably one of the easiest deployments for a network access control. We had everything up and running. That included integrations with Intune, integrations with Rapid7 within about 2 hours from start to finish.
Wow. Impressive. Yeah, I think staying ahead of these areas is going to be really important. And I think that's what this is demonstrating, that as we're maturing in our methods of protecting our areas of our network or the inside, insurance providers or companies are also going to catch on and get pretty smart, saying like, well, how are you providing zero trust? It's, I'd say in the last few years, zero trust has been kind of like a pretty common term out there, but in terms of customers following the rules of zero trust and implementing the steps from the inside out, I think that something like this is going to be pretty crucial to make sure that you have not only the firewall checkbox, but also the correctiveness inside inside your perimeter.
Yeah. Right.
Hey, Will, thank you so much for providing your insight into this. I'm sure that everyone can agree that there's actually a lot more that goes into protecting your environment, and there's actually a lot more that goes into the term of that zero trust. And so, what you demonstrated is pretty powerful stuff, and I'm sure, if there's any questions that our customers have, we're going to think of you as a resource, and but from here, I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff, for having me. And if anyone does want to reach out and try a free trial of the EMS server, definitely reach out to us here at Managed Solution. We can get you the installables and on your path to getting that tested out in your network.
Awesome.
And with that said, we're offering a free assessment for all you attendees. So feel free to take a screenshot of this and schedule an appointment with us. You can reach us through sales@managedsolution.com or call us at the number that you see there. And one of our account executives will get in contact with you and we can plan out your cybersecurity roadmap. Next, we're going to take some questions, but otherwise, have a great rest of your day and thank you for attending.